being someone who's been so connected with it for such a long time, I really felt like I just had to get that opinion out there for people to just witness, you know.
So that's not really the case. It's the super fans mostly that don't like the show. Kind of the thing that you mentioned in Zero's video and in your original video is that you seem to, in particular, don't like the White Rabbit. You mentioned it a little bit before, but I kind of want to get your more precise take on it. I knew I'd get some kind of reaction, but definitely.
Honestly, like, yeah, no, 1000% agree. Like, I would have liked the whole show to have been like episode 6.
You gotta let me know. Do you really hate Anders that much? Like the black guy that you call Black Beavis. Do you hate him that much?
Okay, I think it's good. Okay, did you hear?
I think you said before you got cut off, why didn't Zero want to talk to us? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So, here's the thing about Zero. Alright, I'll try to make this quick. There is some context that needs to be laid out and some disclaimers that I need to say. As of 2 months ago, Rash Reviews released a video called The Problem with Devil May Cry and Netflix. Once I saw this video on my radar, I believed it was one of the worst, if not the worst, video I've come across about the DMC Netflix show. If you want to, there's the response live on my channel if you want to go check it out. However, after this, a YouTuber named Zero saw that I made the video on it, and he credited me, thankfully, unlike the second time you stole my video idea and didn't credit anyway. While my video got less than 1,000 views, of course Zero performed way better than mine and ended up actually catching the attention of Rash Reviews. So Zero makes his video in response to it, and then Rash Reviews saw it and made his response to that. Now from this point on, usually in this type of scenario, I want to do something that I want to keep on doing, which is to reach out to the creator and hopefully have a one-on-one talk. I've done this multiple times before if you know me for any of my history on the internet. So I found Rash's Discord server, I DM'd him, said it was okay. I asked Zero if he would like to join the chat or if he'd like to talk to Rash in general. He denied the request. I don't know why. That's up to you to decide, or Zero can say. Either way, he didn't give a proper reason to me, so he did decline the offer. So that brings us to today, where me and Rash Reviews actually got to sit down and talk about the Netflix show. Well, not just the Netflix show, but his video on it and his response to Zero. So, just a few disclaimers and then we'll get straight into it. Number one, I did edit this one down just a bit. I cut some dead air and stuff like that. I mostly wanted to edit it because a few distractions go on in the background, probably you'll hear later on in the video, and it annoyed me. And since I did edit up the video a bit, I will have a link in the description to an unlisted video on the main channel that will have the whole thing uncut, just in case you want to make sure I'm not doing anything slimy. I only cut some stuff out, like I said, because of the background that happens, and it pisses me off. The last thing I want to mention with this disclaimer is that when I go into having this conversation, I really don't go in having a super debate bro mindset. I'm not here to get owns or clips or whatever. At the end of the day, I just want to talk with the other person. I'm not going to be that aggressive. To be honest, what you see in videos of me is usually a character versus my live streams and me actually talking to people. I'm a lot more chill and laid back and more like my actual self. So I won't be like pressuring him or like trying to attack him on anything. So if you're looking for own, this isn't it. Anyway, the usual stuff, check out the main channel. I made a DMC3 video. And with all of that out of the way, I think we can start the conversation. And it's a bit of a long one, but it's a good one. And I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, lots of fun stuff.
Oh yes, it really is.
Alrighty, would you like to get into it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I wanted to start this off with telling you a little story. Don't worry, it's a short story and it has good themes, purpose. You know, it's got a good arc to it. You know, good payoffs. I a long time ago I made a video about DMC Devil May Cry, and I responded to a guy called Manga Common. He's a whole backstory there. But one of the guys that called me out for that and made a response video to that was this guy called Android Axel. Now, I didn't know too much about this Android Axel guy other than that he likes Manga Common and that he made a response to me. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, would you like to talk? And then we ended up talking, and then after all that, to this day, we remain good friends. You know, good YouTube buddies. We've cameoed in other stuff. I've cameoed in some of his stuff, but he hasn't shown it for some reason because he's a lazy dude. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm not looking in here for like some kind of gotcha moments or something. I'm not here to like, gotcha, buddy, and then pretend that I won the argument. What I'm really here to do is just like discuss to you like what were your thoughts about something this. Maybe I'll push back, but I want to like for both of us to get a deeper understanding of what you were trying to say, because sometimes some of the arguments can come down to mistranslation. So.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I'm about to play a game in the background while I sit here and talk to you for a second.
Sure.
What game should I play?
So.
Because I like just treating it like I'm sitting down to one of my buddies, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'll play Yeah, we can start, honestly.
All right. So, definitely.
Go with the floor.
So my first question is, and this is something that I was wondering, do you ever script your videos by chance?
I used to, like a long time ago, but it was like way too time consuming, and then I would have to like reach a weekly deadline on my original channel to make content, because literally on YouTube, I was looking at my analytics one day, and it was like, you're not dropping videos fast enough. And I was like, damn. I was like, well, if it takes a lot of time to script it, I kind of feel like I have no choice but to kind of, come at it raw. And I feel like also I enjoy not scripting videos because, I mean, granted, there are some issues that I do and don't notice. And sometimes, like, just like in the video, I think I said starts finally. I made a mental note when I did that while I was recording the commentary in that Devil May Cry response to Zero, but I just, didn't get around to deleting one of those because I was just editing everything, trying to make sure all the jokes I got in were sticking the landing, and I definitely transitioned less and less into scripting, especially when my first channel, Rash Plays, I don't know if anyone knows me off of there, but I blew up off of doing like rant videos, and then people like really enjoyed that raw energy. And I was like, you know what, maybe I can kind of come a little bit full circle with that and stay true to my roots and give a lot of my viewers what they liked about me originally, plus a new kind of flair and flavor that I don't have, because I noticed that way back when, a lot of people would tell me, like, people would share my videos, and sometimes the videos that I do script, because I'd always try and go for more of a documentary kind of presentation, a lot of those people just said it was boring. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I think I can, not only give off more emotion, but it's a lot more efficient for me to make content. So I definitely started leaning more into not scripting. Originally, I wanted to stick to scripting, but my brother was like, nah. He's like, we should just, like, he's like, we don't have to do it. Just jump behind the mic and just let it flow naturally. I was like, okay, you know what? We can try it a couple times and see what happens. Like, there are times where I would say really bad habits I noticed, but I try and break out of that. Maybe I'd say like a lot, or ends up. Oh, ends up was a bad one, because sometimes I rewatch my content, I'm like, fuck, I said that word like 50 times. But, now I'm kind of, it gives you a lot more self-awareness. In a way, I kind of do recommend scripting and not scripting sometimes. It depends on really the subject matter and how knowledgeable you are on it, because sometimes when it came to making that DMC video, after watching it immediately, I had like so many fresh thoughts, or like maybe even some of the games I played. But then, the opportunity comes when you can't jump behind the mic as soon as you want to, and it's like, damn, 2 days in, and some of the thoughts I had before are kind of missing. And then, I kind of like sit there and kind of have to refresh myself and look back a little bit. But other than that, I'd say I definitely kind of do like not scripting my videos now, even though there are issues, but it definitely makes the whole entire process way easier.
All right. I just wanted to ask because I like at some points I noticed that you were either stuttering just slightly, or that you were definitely coming up with something on the fly. But I mean, it definitely, I get what you're saying, that it helps. But I think that what your experience have was the exact opposite for me. For like a long while in my younger days, I didn't make a lot of scripted content like at all. And I kind of just rolled off the tongue, you know what I mean? And I get that because it's definitely easier. But I noticed when I scripted videos, a lot of my points against something was definitely a lot tighter and a lot more focused. But I see what you mean. You want to focus on more that rant aspect of your channel. And like I said, everybody's different. It doesn't have to be the way you think about it. I just thought it was a worthy question to ask and your reasoning for it. Since you do make a lot of points that I feel definitely come off script, you know? So.
Yeah, it's crazy because even like that zero video I did, like, you know, I just did that off the top of the dome, and one of my friends was like, "Did you script this?" I was like, "No," and he's like, "What the fuck?" And I was just like, I mean, you just gotta like, I don't know, I just kind of like really focused in, and sometimes just if you really feel like it, if you just need to take your time. Well, and a lot of people, when they think they can just do it off the top of the dome and just do it all in one take, that's just crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I feel like the same principle can be applied with making music. Because I remember one time there's an opportunity where I was making music with friends, and they're like, "We got to finish a song in one night." I was like, "No, you got to at least like take a week or so to try and process and follow a main idea and intention, then make that music." But, you know, I guess these guys really just wanted a one-hit wonder. So what they were trying to do, like their purpose behind it, was just kind of affecting the creative process. So that is like one thing I really try and make come across very transparent. And, you know, sometimes I script the videos and I've had like people still kind of not digest what I'm saying as well as I want them to. And I was like, you know what, you know, people are going to think what they want at the end of the day. So I felt like, although I could definitely make it come across easier, sometimes when I say points, even when I scripted it, the mental math behind the conversation wouldn't register for some people. So I'm like, it's going to happen regardless. So I'm just going to do what would benefit me more. So, because honestly, I felt like I really didn't have a choice. So
okay.
That's what it really boils down to.
So, while we brought it up, since you brought it up anyway, I guess we can definitely talk about the Zero video in particular. We'll get to your main video once we're done with this. But definitely, I think one of the points that I think definitely got under your skin was the whole you not playing the games or whatever, and then Zero making fun of it. I think one of the reasons why that I feel like that argument definitely got under your skin or I feel like has more punch against you than it probably should, is definitely the fact that you call out Addy for, you know, not being a fan of the games. Like you say, he's only read the iceberg or watched the cutscenes online, and to that extent, maybe that is true. But I definitely do think that Andy has, you know, put a lot of work and definitely play the games. But having said that, I've also seen a lot of people that not only like the games, that don't play the games. I've also seen a lot of people who hate on the show, don't play the games like at all. I mentioned that in the beginning of my response to you when I mentioned that, is that there's a lot of videos out there that are shitting on the Netflix series that have just either never cared for DMC or just watched all the cutscenes online and have zero thought about what the actual games are like, you know? And I feel like I get what you mean. Like when you mess up on something like, you know, Plasma being from DMC2, you said, but it's, you know, actually from DMC1. Those mistakes are okay, but when I feel like you're kind of throwing stones in a glass house, you know what I mean? And like I said, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I feel like it got way more under your skin than you should, you know?
Okay. Honestly, about that, I'd say, you know how I like said that thing about Audie? I can't remember my direct quote, but I said it was like, it feels like it came from that. Like, you know, I wouldn't just like flat out say he doesn't play the games, because I think it'd be crazy for them to hand a Devil May Cry anime to a guy who hasn't played the games. But Like, it just feels like his interpretation was just so very lukewarm from the style and the atmosphere that the games give off. So that was like really the impression that he was giving me through the show. But I would, I can't really prove whether or not he plays the game, so I wouldn't really jump immediately to that point. That was just really the impression the anime was giving off, because the anime wasn't like the games. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to his point, like getting under my whether or not he really got under my skin, I mean, I wasn't upset about it. I just think like he was just basically using my point that I used against Adi against me. So I mean, like logically, I could see why he would try and jump to that conclusion with the whole Agni and Rudra thing he thought was going on there, and then me not knowing the plasma stuff. But oh sheesh. But my bad. I'm kind of still trying to process everything.
It's all good.
But it was an interesting point to tackle, because honestly, I thought it would have been really fun to bring up that point, because there are a lot of people that I've seen covering the anime who never played the games, and that was another reason that really pushed me to talk about this anime, because I played Devil May Cry for a huge portion of my life, like in elementary school and all the way up to now. It was a game I always thought about, and just seeing so many people go so hard about talking about the anime when they haven't had like that active experience for it. There's like a different level of respect for the series, I think there is, because when you play Devil May Cry, you really notice how hard that goddamn game is.
Yeah.
And when you play it, you just kind of see a lot of things differently. Like, just like what you said with video games, everyone has like a different interpretation of it. So being someone who's been so connected with it for such a long time, I really felt like I just had to get that opinion out there for people to just witness, and I feel like that's what really led to all of it. And that video was a really good excuse to show some Devil May Cry gameplay, which is what I really enjoyed about it. There's like a running gag in my community where, because my first channel was called Rash Plays, but I always did anime content. They'd be like, so when are we gonna, my viewers would be like, so when are we gonna get some gameplay? When are you gonna talk about games? And
Yeah.
That was like basically me throwing them a bit of a bone in that video. Like when I make a lot of content, I do like to show a lot of personal love and connection to my viewers. So I know a lot of the content kind of hits different for them, kind of with how the anime hits different for me. So I'd really like to show a lot of nods and tidbits to longtime viewers of the channel. So it was really nice to be able to finally give them not only give gameplay, to give the show Zero the gameplay, but to show them the gameplay that they've been wanting out of me for so long.
All right. So I guess I'm just really wondering. I feel like that whole argument about you not playing the game, because I can tell the way that you talk about the games, and by your gameplay that you showed when you responded to Zero, you clearly have knowledge about the games. I just feel like next time when you just look up a name, just if you don't remember, just look it up on Google. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm gonna be honest. Some of the enemies in DMC Devil May Cry, I don't remember. Yet I have like 300 hours in that game. So sometimes I have to look it up. There's no shame in that, you know what I mean? But it's just like, it's going to be a bit of a punch against you if you try and say that Andy didn't keep the spirit of the games when you get small things of that wrong. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's like something you can easily sidestep, for next time,
Yeah. Yeah. And, that is definitely, I 1,000% agree with that. But, sometimes I like kind of really showing a lot more I'd show a lot more transparency than I should when it comes to like content creation and stuff. And I do realize like regardless, not everybody is going to get the genuine personality that I try and show, because even when I live stream, a lot of people try and take it and turn it against me when, you know, I'm like flat out telling the truth. And, you know, one of my favorite sayings is the truth hurts, so people are going to kind of take me up front, and it's going to not only be used against me, but most of the times, a lot of the things I'm not like, I mean, that I say aren't going to be liked. So sometimes I kind of just roll with it. But from a criticism standpoint, definitely that awareness definitely needs to be there a lot more in the creation process. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But like, I really felt like when it came to like my perspective of the series, like I wanted to show everybody like, hey, like I'm not afraid of not remembering or not knowing specific things, because, you know, sometimes people be like, hey, or how much are you into the game? Like Zelda, like sometimes I don't know a boss in Zelda. Like I can't even get the name of one of the damn bosses right now. Twin Golem, like the two serpents that you fight in Majora's Mask, or like maybe even Bongo or something. Like getting those words wrong. I mean, those names wrong. I mean, even though I may not fully remember what's going on, I still do want to show that there's still a lot of substance and knowledge behind my words, including that passion that I want to show.
All right, good. I was just really wondering, because I feel like that was definitely the main thing that a lot of people that watch Zero's videos, like, main takeaway from that will be is that, oh, this guy doesn't know, this guy hasn't played the games, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sadly, I see that a little bit in your comment section too, with your response to Zero. Like, one guy said, oh, this guy only played DMC 2 in the reboot and then watched the Netflix show. And it's like, well, that's not even close. Zero doesn't like the reboot. He doesn't like 2, but he's played a shit ton of the other DMC games. So, like, I don't know. I feel like the term hasn't played the games a lot, been thrown around, especially recently with, like, video games now getting adaptations. Now there's this kind of purity test of, you know, have you played the games, blah, 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 and everybody's super... It's like a weird spy movie where we're trying to figure out who the imposter is, you know?
Among Us.
But
yeah, it definitely does feel like that.
Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to clear that out of the way. So another thing that you mentioned in your response to Zero, and I really want to get more of a correction from you, is maybe we'll just knock it out 2 in 1. You said that the show's not like the game, the games in particular. You called it similar to the reboot, which I do agree it's similar to the reboot, but I don't... Honestly, out of looking at the games and seeing their general story, I think that the Netflix show generally lines up with a lot of the things that the DMC series did. The problem with the DMC series is that it can be somewhat inconsistent at times, either with their characterization of Dante or certain tones and characters, just in general. So when you say stuff like the show is not like the games, and it's like, well, the games are kind of flexible too. That's why I know you went and Zero went on this tangent, which I don't agree with Zero either on this point, that, you know, everything in Devil May Cry is a joke because his pistols can shoot demon bullets or whatever. You know, like at that point I'm like, okay, come on. Like, sure, there's stuff like silly stuff like that, but there's also some serious stuff. Like, DMC generally takes itself pretty seriously when it comes to main emotional moments. Main emotional moments are where the true seriousness of the games lie. However, when it comes to like just everything in between, DMC definitely likes to have fun with its stuff. So I feel like it isn't serious, but it isn't super, you know, jokey either, like Zero was saying. So I think that there's like a good balance in between. And just to tie this all back, do you like the whole serious thing? And then when it comes to the show not being like the games, I just kind of want you to elaborate a little bit more on that, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, I'm glad you brought up that point, because that's one of the things that makes Devil May Cry just such a genius series. I'm gonna use Tokyo Ghoul for reference here, because I don't know if you really follow the series or the author, Sui Ishida, I usually find myself being more attached to the artist than their initial works. And, speaking in the context and nature of Devil May Cry, I do know Kamiya had like completely different intentions from Hideaki Itsuno, and then me coming into the series off of Itsuno's vision, I came to appreciate what he did a lot more. Like, because when I see, Devil May Cry 3 Dante versus Devil May Cry 1 Dante, I'm like, this is the Devil May Cry 3 Dante, and 4 and 5. I'm like, that's the one I'm kind of more akin to versus the very serious approach of Dante in 1. Just kind of a little bit with the games with him, like speaking a lot less and kind of his lines coming across with way more grit than that playful attitude and mocking nature that he usually has. But I do love how flexible Devil May Cry is, because if we take a series like Tokyo Ghoul, one thing is it's always dark, it's always edgy. There's like no downtime, there's no lighthearted moments to break the pace. There aren't really moments where the characters get to enjoy themselves and we get to see a different side of them. And I feel like, being able to jump through different ways of character expression through the medium definitely gives the show a way different impression, because like characters laugh, you get to see them cry, you get to see them get mad, versus just that feeling of depression and fear that a game like an anime like Tokyo Ghoul normally gives off. Because that's one thing that makes the flexibility so amazing, because it comes to a point that you don't know what to expect. And with more of these other series that hone in on a single vibe or atmosphere, it's like, well, this is what makes Thief Thief, this is what makes Deus Ex Deus Ex. Or like, for instance, the game Darksiders, you know what to expect. There's not going to be any jokes. They're going to talk with a high vocabulary, and the game is just going to be very, very gritty and serious the entire time. So I feel like that it's definitely a very lenient point, and I can definitely agree with what Zero says. Like, I'm not going to throw away that argument of it being a joke, because it can be lighthearted, but there is a balance there that I do feel like needs to be recognized. Because I noticed, like, during I think when Devil May Cry 5 came out, I saw a lot of guys that really kind of get really deep into the meme interpretation of Devil May Cry. I mean, if you're familiar with the anime Berserk, a lot of people really, like, that's a very serious series, and people always try and kind of make a joke out of it. And a lot of people just, like, get that interpretation of it when they get into the series. They kind of approach it with some kind of, like, dude bro attitude, and they're like, hey, this is what the game is. And it's like, well, you got to kind of separate your perspective versus what the game is feeding us, like a lot of people when they play games, they don't try and sit there and take it in and process what's coming to them. They just kind of consume it and go with whatever they initially thought it was. And that's what I think makes it interesting, because you play a game as a kid, and then you play it as an adult. It's like, wow, this is what I was playing. I had no idea, because I played Devil May Cry way back when, and then even interpreting it now, or when I was playing it again in my middle school and high school years, there were still a lot of things I wasn't picking up on. And then being wiser and a little bit more open-minded, it's like, wow, this is like really a lot more demonic than I remembered, And I'd say that really gives the series a very special place that definitely needs to be recognized, because it can do a lot. Like, you know, and it comes into even Resident Evil as well. A lot of people say, hey, it's like a horror game. Then people are like, well, it's an action game. Or a lot of people even say it's slapstick. And I feel like that comes with an evolution and growth during the creative process. And, you know, the average gamer isn't going to dive deep and try and focus on things like atmosphere and, you know, who the director of a game is. It's becoming a lot more common now, which I'm definitely appreciating, because, you know, a lot of it needs to definitely be taken into notice so that we can recognize what we do and don't like in video games more. And that's one thing I definitely like to see a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, what you were going back to was that there's being a balance. I absolutely agree with that statement. There's definitely a lot of balance in the DMC series, because it's kind of interesting how we get from DMC3 and yet the next DMC related product to come out of that was the DMC anime. I'm not talking about the Netflix show. I'm talking the one from 2006 or 2007.
Yeah, yes. Oh man, that takes me back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was watching that on my grandmother's computer back when like computers had like fat backs. It was like a Dell.
Oh man.
You turn it on, it'd be like, you got mail.
Oh man.
Yeah, I remember just like trying to sit down and watch that, because after playing like Devil May Cry 3, I was like really obsessed. I should definitely give that a rewatch, because I think I was like 7 or 8 when I watched it way back when. And then I tried giving it another shot in high school, but then I don't know, it didn't really grasp my attention, because, you know, I think that old anime used to be on Netflix way back when, because I remember when Netflix had like a way bigger anime catalog. Like they had amazing shows like Glean Saga, Casher and Sins and stuff, and it's kind of hard to find any of those really low-key shows on there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely the anime from 2006, 2007, it's really... How do I explain this? Its animation isn't that good, but I think that like the characterization of Dante is like really good. Sure, he's not exactly the one that you may know from like DMC 3 and 4, but I feel like if he's a successor to DMC 1 Dante, I think he does that pretty well. And the thing about like the Netflix show versus the anime is that the anime is not only canon, but actually is like, oh, this is what it's like on Dante's days off, you know, it's just him going through the motions. It's more episodic versus the Netflix show is it's in its own canon. It's super bombastic and stuff like that. So yeah, I would definitely give the anime a rewatch. I watched it recently, but I plan to watch it again, mostly because I do want to go on my way to watch it. Mostly because there's a lot of interesting stuff in that anime that definitely that we didn't get later on in the series for sure. So it even gave us the strawberry sundae ice cream thing for Dante, which I always thought was pretty cute. So yeah, going back to what you said about evolving and changing, I definitely believe that we're kind of getting to the point with games in video game history where a lot of these franchises have been going for so long. You pointed out Resident Evil, and that's a good definitely a good example, is that now we get like so many different teams handing off and stuff like that. And since gaming can be like a variety of different things, not only in gameplay but in story as well, it can lead into a completely different set of mechanics and storylines and tone and everything can change. The biggest example I like to say of like a big reboot would probably be Splinter Cell Conviction. The past 4 Splinter Cell games, very sneaky, very quiet, and you're supposed to go basically the whole thing without touching anybody and being like a ghost. Versus in Conviction, literally the community calls them John Wick experience, where they're just marking and executing and running through as fast as possible, shooting as many people. It's like wildly different, you know what I mean? And that's the thing with game series going so long, is that they can change and evolve, and that's definitely where I feel like the DMC games definitely finds itself in a little. It's not as much as Splinter Cell Conviction, but definitely, you know, some of that, you know.
Yeah, I know. My favorite game series, which I don't know if you played, is Sly Cooper.
I haven't played it,
So
sadly.
they definitely drastically changed the direction. Oh, okay, okay. But they have like the original trilogy, which is made by the creators of Infamous and Ghost of Tsushima, and then they handed the game off to another studio, and it it was not the same. Like what you would like want to come and expect was just completely missing. You know, like a story that you could take seriously. There's a lot of cringe dialogue. It's funny.
Yeah.
Kind of akin to the Devil May Cry anime, but there's like a huge amount of discourse, and then I feel like a lot of people should take into consideration like, hey, this wasn't made by the original creators, but then it crosses the line where, hey, this project that they made is now part of the canon, so this is what you're gonna have to get used to with gaming. Or like Sonic, Sonic definitely took a really different direction, with Sonic Boom, or even a lot of the newer games that came out. Like, they're not anything like the Sonic Adventure games, and it really sucks to see. Like, it's great still seeing these franchises survive, but it's like, would you want it to be a shell of its former self, And then it creates a huge divide between the fans. Like, Crash is another great example. You have the people that enjoy the old PS1 games versus, even people who enjoyed a game like Crash of the Titans, which is drastically different to what Crash really is aesthetically, but even gameplay-wise, And I feel like there are a lot of different takeaways that can be applied, that are being offered to Crash or any IP as a whole, because sometimes I enjoy that nice change of pace, like seeing these different directions. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't take a canonical approach and change what made the series what it is, And those are the thoughts that I really feel like should be talked about and focused on. Like, when a game, like a spin-off comes out, like Ninja Gaiden, I think it's called Yaiba or Gaiden or something, that was a completely different studio, but then people hate on it because it's not what Ninja Gaiden is, but like, hey, if it's a spin-off, there's no harm done, But if it's like Ninja Gaiden 4 and this isn't what it is or akin to its roots, then I can definitely understand and accept any kind of frustrations.
Yeah.
But a lot of people aren't really open-minded. They're like, this is this, and this is what it is, and this is what it has to be,
Yeah, and I definitely believe when it comes to changes, that it's hard to sometimes at the moment tell which are good and which are bad. But that's why I'm kind of why I think it's an okay thing even to stray a bit out of your comfort zone, because you can end up with something that you really like. You may not notice it at first, but over time, it may become almost like its own thing, and that's what makes it special in some ways, is that it can only be done through that series, And I think what you were talking about is also one of the main reasons why we see a lot of remakes, recently, where since people feel like starved and they want to go back to the way that the old ways were, that's where remakes come in. It's not only easy money, but it's also a way to kind of say, hey, you remember thing? All right, we are going back to the original, and then doing that, So there's definitely a lot like that. Definitely a lot like those scenarios, but definitely tying this back into the DMC series, I really think that it like, with a DMC with such a range, with such a difference, I feel like the show really isn't as different as a lot of people may say, you know what I mean? It still generally has the same tone. It's still, well, maybe without the gothic stuff, but a lot of that gothic stuff was kind of missing in DMC 4 or 5, and in some ways the reboot anyway. So there's definitely a lot that can be said about the differences that the show has with the games, which I do agree with. There are definitely a lot of core differences, but I do think that saying that it's not like the games at all, I feel like that's a little bit out of park. You know what I mean? Because I think that it still generally has the same spirit, like Andy was saying in that interview. Even if he may not hit it directly spot on, I think that that's close to what I'm thinking.
Yeah, like the anime. See, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't really have that balance. Just coming off the games, like, I expect that dark, gritty atmosphere, and then a lot of people, their more general idea of Devil May Cry is funny, cool, crazy main character that just kicks demon ass, and I definitely understand that perspective, but I just wish, like, rather than focusing on, like, that main idea and identity of the series, they would kind of encompass the scope of what the games do,
Mm-hmm.
And that was what was really missing, because when, like, that general idea of Dante that exists, that most people expect out of DMC, I'd say, well, a lot of people who don't play the games expect it, so I guess that's another one of the reasons why that kind of definitely gets thrown into discussion, because I know a lot of my friends that get into Devil May Cry, when I talk to them about it, be like, well, it definitely is jokey, and they think it's, like, a lot, like, it definitely is, like, a fun, amazing time, but what always really stands out in the gameplay is, like, when you're running across that tower in Devil May Cry 3, and you're just hearing that clock tick, like, and you're just hearing that music, and I feel like if Adi would have had, like, more moments where, that would have been reminiscent of when Arkham is pulling up in his little Joker kind of
Yeah.
Form, like, it was disturbing. That thing, it completely freaked me out, like, even as a kid. And honestly, when I played Devil May Cry 1 as a kid, when that Alistor sword got inside of his body, I think I was playing that at, like, 8 p.m. Devil May Cry 1 scared me a lot more than 3.
Oh, definitely.
And that kind of a little bit put me off from playing it sometimes. But I was like, even when I was younger, I was like, I gotta beat it eventually, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that anime definitely grasps more of the main idea, but it doesn't really capture that scope that the games cover that I would have personally wanted from the games, like, the references are nods, like, that is fire, like, that is cool, but, even without that, I would have really liked to see, like, what this artist can do. Like, granted, he did bring the rabbit from the manga into the series. I wouldn't have minded even if there was a new character. It's just like, what can this guy do while kind of meeting these expectations that fans envision from Devil May Cry? And I feel like it's really great to see that perspective that someone has on the games, and I can't really speak for Adi when it comes to how he digests the games and everything, but it following that more general idea, I don't know if it's because that's his interpretation, or maybe even the direction process during creation, maybe even sometimes they would just wanted to focus on a mainstream audience, and I try and be open-minded to that possibility, but at times it's just like I just kept getting hit with the feeling like, yes, basically what you can come to expect, because what I hate to say is, like, oh, like, this is a Netflix anime, like, you watch an actual anime, then you watch a Netflix anime, and then it's like it has, like, a rubric and guidelines as to what is being made, kind of like you watch, like, Yu Yu Hakusho, or maybe even, like, Dragon Ball Z versus like Dragon Ball Super. You know, like sometimes in Dragon Ball Z they'll slap someone's head clean off with the wave of an arm. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that is kind of missing where they're actively killing people, and then they're like, okay, well, this time in the show we're not gonna have a character die, and it's like, well, this isn't really what I loved about the series. And it's like, and it's a shame to not see that make it through, because, you know, if Adi would have kind of found that balance, there would have been like even people like me who play the games and like come for it to see like, hey, is he following and seeing the same things that I see and appreciate the games for? Is that gonna be recognized? And then, you know, it's not really there, and there's more of kind of a focus in the. I think it's kind of rough to even say the kind of like meme culture aspect behind things, but I feel like that is the more common approach. You know, they definitely just want to be very safe with what's being done, and that with art, I feel like is damning. You know, we could have really had something like I said in the Zero video, that even old and new fans can come to appreciate. And I feel like even with new games that come out nowadays, they should just try and find a balance between the two, and, you know, that maybe the series can evolve to its best possible form. And I feel like what really sucks is, you know, how we get like so many few projects. It makes it more frustrating because it's not every day there's an attempt for a Devil May Cry anime, or, I mean, it's not every day that we're going to get a Devil May Cry game, and then it's like, now, what is Devil May Cry 3? Like, what's the next step going to be for a Devil May Cry game? Is it just going to be Devil May Cry 3 with more content, more polished gameplay, and things that we come to love and expect from the game, or is it just going to be a quick cash-in that is not really going to appeal to all the aspects that hardcore fans have been waiting years for, you know? And it sucks not getting that drought really quenched when playing the games for so long. A lot of those newcomers, they're not really going to understand the kind of weight that it carries, and they're not going to really get that appreciation that long-term fans have. And it's upsetting when, you know, the long-term fans kind of get thrown under the bus. And I feel like that needs to be focused on a lot more, because, you know, the references were there for long-time fans to kind of acknowledge, but, you know, I could do without references. It's cool. You know, I like fan service, but I think you've seen like have you seen that Spider-Man No Way Home when they started having Andrew Garfield in the film and Tobey Maguire?
Yeah.
They're literally my friends. They'd be like, "Well, the movie was great because they had those two included in the film." I'm like, well, you know, you got to kind of separate the fan service and enjoying the movie for what it is, because when people get into media, they're like, oh, I experienced it like this, so it's amazing. But not everyone's going to really approach it with, hey, I can take away the qualities fan service may have, or references. Like, they're cool, and, you know, this is a point I was trying to get across in my video, but, you know, it doesn't make what I'm looking at better or worse. And then some people, they kind of let that super fanhood nature possess them, and they can't really see the actual flaws that exist in that content that they're consuming.
Okay, all right. So there's definitely a lot that you said there, so I'd like to get to some of it if I can. Definitely, dark and gritty is an element of DMC that I do think is there, and that I think you are correct on. Do I think that makes up entirety of it? No, but I do think that that is a necessary part of the games, or at least a necessary part of the older games. But definitely there's an element of that, like you were talking about how the tower and the ticking and stuff like that, and how the overall atmosphere was kind of affecting your gameplay. I'd say, yeah, that can definitely be a good thing, and I think that is a good thing about DMC 3, but that can also, in a sense, be said about DMC 2. You know what I mean? It also had atmosphere and that kind of dark and gritty aspect that made DMC 2 that. Now, am I saying DMC 2 is a good game? No, I don't like that game. I think there are some good things, but I don't like that game. However, just because a DMC game is like more of a DMC game doesn't mean that that necessarily makes it a good game still. You know what I mean? I feel like it's okay, and especially if this is somebody that loves the reboot, that it's okay to make changes and to evolve the series in a new way. The last thing I want to mention is that your element of super fans can't see the flaws. That was something that you recently mentioned. The thing is that with super fans, in the case of the Netflix show, is that it's not really the case. It's the super fans mostly that don't like the show. You know what I mean? I feel like super fans, when you say that, definitely applies to your when it came to the Spider-Man crossover. I completely agree with that. I mean, everybody was kind of, you know, excited for that. You know, it's really only been toyed with since, you know, Shattered Dimensions. So, but yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. But going back to the atmosphere, just because it's a more faithful DMC experience doesn't always mean it's a good one. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Netflix show is still, while still somewhat being what the DMC series is about, it's okay for it to strangle outside the narrative every once in a while and to make something different. I rather than make something different and for a chance to be good than stay the same and then just do nothing with it, and at most it'll be mid. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Like, you can use Call of Duty for example. That was like one of the greatest examples to use. Like, how many times, like, you know, I don't like the sci-fi stuff, but I can understand why they did it, because, you know, we can't just keep playing that same run and gun military kind of game over and over again. Like, it's cool to see it lean into different aspects, but one thing I definitely fear is them forgetting those qualities. Like, you know, you play a game like World at War, like that was like, they honed in and went all the way with the military aspects, and then you start to slowly see how the story leans away from that. And, you know, the Devil May Cry remake, a lot of people did hate that, and I grew up watching Angry Joe show. He was definitely one of the content creators I always watched growing up. And then I look at his DMC review, and when I was younger, I was eating it up. I was like, yeah, fuck that new Dante. But then I got older, I was like, well, I mean, it's kind of stupid because, you know, actually taking the story for what it is. And you know what? Even when I was younger, when I played the game, despite everything, I can't remember the year it came out. 2011, 2013, something around, not 2013, 2011, I think.
2013, yeah.
Like that. Then I was like, wow, honestly, this game isn't that bad. I'm actually liking it, despite how different it is. And, you know, the vibe they're going for, it's cool. Like, the Combi Christ music on the track, I just feel like a lot of people were really upset because they were expecting a Devil May Cry 5, and it wasn't Devil May Cry 5, and that just completely pissed them off. But yeah, it's not Devil May Cry 5, and honestly, that's a good thing, because, you know, there are fans that were passionate as us that just happened to get their hands on Devil May Cry, and they're not going to sit here and just take the mantle from Capcom. I wouldn't want fans to do that, but, you know, sometimes they rise to the occasion. I can't really argue that point for Halo recently, but right. You know, it's when a fan hits the mark, it definitely it's amazing to see. You know, I applaud it, but when sometimes people who are fans want to take a complete different direction and give us a new focus and interpretation of the characters, I don't think that deserves to be shit on. You know, like, we had so many different ideas and aspects of society. We had a Dante who I'd say at moments kind of leans to more of a more toxic masculine interpretation of the character, and that was cool. That was fire. I actually loved how they made Dante more of an asshole than what he actually is. And I think looking at it for what it does, I really do like that DMC Devil May Cry game. And, a lot of people got mad at the white hair, but, we got that at the end of the game. And it just sucks because there was some potential there that we never got to see, and we had a completely different interpretation of the Dante-Virgil rivalry, and because people just were so stuck in their ways, we missed out on what could have been a really amazing experience for long-time fans, because, you play the original games and you play that game, you're like, damn, they did Virgil like this? they made Dante like this? Like, it's just crazy.
I agree. And definitely one of the more interesting parts of DMC Devil May Cry that influenced DMC5 was definitely Virgil's downfall. Some people don't like it, some people like it. But definitely... what?
I loved Virgil's downfall. That it was the story. Like, see, a lot of people, they don't really, when you just even watching the cutscenes there, it's like, damn. Like, I think Ninja Theory just, I don't know, their storytelling, their approach, like, even with the Heavenly Sword games, they're really good at making you feel uncomfortable. And then their approach versus the existing approaches that we have in Devil May Cry games, it made me feel uncomfortable towards Virgil's character development. It gave me a feeling that not even the original series could give me, and that just made it all the better, Mm-hmm. And I really wish we could have got more of that to see the light of day.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, but definitely one of the reasons that I brought up Virgil's downfall was because they did something different with Virgil's character that ended up influencing him in Virgil in DMC5. Not only gameplay-wise, which had a heavy implication in his gameplay in 4 and 5, and the doppelganger even becoming a thing in 5, like how it was in DMC Devil May Cry Virgil's downfall, but definitely the characterization of the character more than just power, you know what I mean? DMC3 had good somewhat characterization of Virgil, but it felt like a lot of them was up to interpretation. It was just trying to piece it together why he hate that, because his mother died and he feels powerless, and you just kind of went with that. There was not an official, like, real backstory for him. There was no flashback or anything like that. But Virgil's downfall goes out of its way to show, okay, it's power, but it's also, his his rivalry with his brother, him not feeling enough, him not being good with Kat and feeling insecure about himself, feeling that he's been left alone by his mother and not the favorite. It's these kind of elements that kind of make Virgil that would later be carried on to DMC5, whether some DMC fans want to admit it or not. But yeah, I definitely say, it's okay, and I get the fear of straying away too far from the original. But I feel like game series always have a good boomerang of coming back. Like, it's very rare to see a game series take one direction and then completely stay that direction no matter what. You know what I mean? There's always changes, there's always stuff like that, but there's always a director or a creator that comes along and kind of turns it backwards and goes, okay, maybe let's go back to the old game. So I feel like this fear of getting something that's off kilter, you know what I mean? And that's an okay experience to have, but it's also an experience that's human, but it can also be a good thing for change to happen. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Like in DMC Devil May Cry, they actually explored the character, and then it came to a point where they even got some people off of Ninja Theory to even help with the development of Devil May Cry 5. And I think the fact that that line between creators and fans was completely severed, and then they're able to come together and probably try and give us the best Devil May Cry they can. I feel like there's more opportunities for that help the series reach its fullest potential. And if it stays safe the entire time, there are things that could be missed out on. Like different experiences that can be told through the game, or even like even gameplay wise, because people always want like those tank controls in Resident Evil games, but then, I mean, we get to that new third person camera in the remakes. It's a lot more immersive. It can be a lot more horrifying at times, and I can understand how even the tank controls can be scarier in terms of how you play the game. But the fact that there's those two different distinctions and experiences that exist, we kind of get the best of both worlds in a way. And with Devil May Cry being so niche, from what people like, honestly, I don't know if I even want to call it niche anymore. I feel like it's kind of like the action game,
Mm-hmm.
Like when people think of an action game, they think of Devil May Cry. So the fact that it stands so tall on that precipice when it comes to its identity, I feel like there is a lot to offer there, and it just sucks because it's so few far in between when we're given these opportunities, and that's what makes it like a lot more frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how we digest the content. Because maybe if they would drop a Devil May Cry game maybe once every 3 years, these different explorations and interpretations would be taken with a lot less heavy of a hand, and people will be more open-minded to these directions and appreciate it more. But I just feel like the lack thereof is what really creates that annoyance for consumers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely see that 100%. You know what I mean? So I really wanted to get down to the bottom of this, and I'm glad. I think that we had that good back and forth when it came to that part of the discussion, because I feel like there's a lot of complexity to things. It's more than just it's bad because it's different. There's definitely a lot of like that is up for interpretation when it comes to how different a series can be and how it changes and how it goes back to the original and remakes and all that put together. So switching gears just a little bit, I wanted to talk to you, and this is kind of the thing that you mentioned in Zero's video and in your original video, is that you seem to, in particular, don't like the White Rabbit. You mentioned it a little bit before, but I kind of want to get your more precise take on it. Because from my experience, or at least the way that I see it, I think that the White Rabbit is probably one of the better DMC villains we've gotten in a long time, because a lot of DMC villains are kind of just obsessed with power, or in some ways just land, I guess, and that's kind of their core motivation. Don't get me wrong, Arkham's a good villain, like he's a good antagonist, but he isn't really that deep. Neither is the Pope. Mundus was decent. Arius is kind of whatever, and then Urizen is just Virgil again, kind of, sorta. And then Mundus from the reboot, he's pretty good, but he gets like one good scene that gives him good context for his character and stuff like that. So I think the White Rabbit, especially in episode 6, getting to see his whole backstory, I think really did him a lot of favors. And I think the White Rabbit's definitely one of the better villains that we've gotten for DMC. So I was just curious about your take on that.
Oh yeah, I'd say the actor did a phenomenal job as the White Rabbit. I wouldn't say I dislike him per se. I definitely, like, when he was on the screen, honestly, the show was kind of at its best. Even though in the video I did say, like, Enzo was my favorite character, I'd definitely say the best character objectively was the White Rabbit. Like, all the moments that he had is really where I felt like the show was at its strongest. And leaning into what you said about what makes him stand out from other characters, yeah, I'd say he comes into his own. Like, he's a more human character. He gave us a different perspective on what we would normally expect from, just killing the demons like we usually do. Kind of jumping between the lines, just like Dante. That's kind of an interesting parallel there. I definitely got to throw the bone to the show for that. But at times, the one thing that really kind of grinded my gears was the execution of the whole plot. I'd say the White Rabbit was because the approaches they took, I enjoyed. It was just kind of the execution that really took me out of the show, because it just kind of felt like more of a crowd pleasing show rather than, you know, a game adaptation. And I've what's another game adaptation I've seen? Like, I don't know, I feel like they really just do that a lot. And that, like, I was kind of expecting this from the Devil May Cry anime when it was announced, so that's why I kind of didn't turn a blind eye to it. I kind of turned a blind eye to it. And, you know, when I saw the White Rabbit, I was like, oh shit. I was like, who is this? I was like, what the hell? And, you know, that did kind of pique my interest a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't push me too much into finally giving the show a chance. But when I just started seeing, you know, people saying it was the best anime of the year and stuff like that, and I'm like, I play Devil May Cry. I shouldn't not talk about this, and I like anime a lot too. So, I mean, it kind of felt like an opportunity that was made for me to speak about the situation going on. But I'd also with the backstory, I sat through the music video. I do feel like the idea is there. You know, it's like, I'm not completely against the idea of having an episode with no dialogue. I actually do think that is a very interesting, nuanced approach. It's just, it just felt really, I don't want to say mainstream. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's not like, I'm not saying the show had to, like, I don't want to say that it doesn't have to try so hard to be accessible. It's just like, there is nothing that really stood out. It just kind of felt a little fake deep, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, there's this interesting approach, an episode about dialogue, and then, I mean, even the music choice, it just feels very standard. Like, it didn't really kind of move me. Like, consuming media for so long, it just kind of feels there. It just feels like what you would expect out of, like, through the modern film process. And that's one thing I like with anime. Even though a lot of these people that make animes in Japan, or in this case, Adi and, you know, the American audience coming together and making an anime, they just follow that cinematic idea that makes things come across very generic versus what made anime great. Not to sound like an old head when it comes to anime, because, you know, you got like series like Fist of the North Star or Rurouni Kenshin, Saint Seiya, like classics like that. And then you have Dragon Ball going against the grain and not being a show where it's just blood and guts the entire time. And, you know, what made Dragon Ball so special is that it was able to find that balance and break those boundaries to allow even, like, children to watch it. But with the show, it just really just felt like way too much of what I was used to and expecting, you know? And that just made it very disappointing in a lot of aspects, because there is merit to it kind of going against the games, which I'm not completely against, but, you know, you just want to see the game brought to life, you know? I think that's all anyone really expects out of a adaptation of a game in any form. Like, are they going to do it justice, or are they going to follow the source material? Like, even, like, you know, we have the situation with the Witcher Netflix series. The actor got into, like, a dispute with the director, because the director's like, we're going to change the script and make it not follow the game so contemporary audiences can get into it. And then, you know, the actor was like, no, we're not going to do this. So when it came down to shoot the scene, he literally cited lines from the entire book off of, like, the top of the dome. And, you know, a lot of people who even watch the shows aren't gonna play the games, and I feel like they still should have the opportunity to enjoy what makes the games great. And when it comes to that alienation, I guess I could say, that'll be the word I use for now. But it just sucks because it's like, okay, someone who's not a gamer, I like Devil May Cry. I'm a Devil May Cry fan, and I play the games. But I can come together with this person and find an excuse for them to like what I like.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those kind of opportunities kind of get stolen because, hey, it may get my friend who's not really into these things into it, but when we're both watching it, I'm sitting here cringing and not really enjoying it, but he's enjoying it, or he's just kind of like, it's all right. It was generic, but I had fun. And I kind of hate when that gets thrown around a lot. Like, oh, it was good, like a lot of people are like, hey, you're just a hater. You can just find enjoyment. Like, I can find enjoyment in everything. You're not loosening up and having fun. It's like, no, I can definitely do that. It's just that I'm not going to completely turn my brain off when I'm looking at something, And, I'm going to watch it with that cognitive notion of fanhood that I have, but I'm not going to sit there and let that fanhood dictate the overall objective quality of something. And that's just a huge problem that a lot of people just kind of they lean into their ways a little too much. And I kind of feel like even with the show, maybe even Adi kind of leaned into his own direction a little too much, but it lets the show stand out because rather than being a glorified version of the 2005 anime, it became more so Adi Devil May Cry rather than just Devil May Cry, which I can come to appreciate, but being someone who enjoyed Devil May Cry for so long, am I really going to want to sit down and watch Adi Shankar's Devil May Cry versus the idea of the Devil May Cry anime that would be something that fans would want to gravitate towards?
Okay, I definitely see your point there, that you want to see what the original is, but definitely going back, I do have to ask, when it comes to your take on episode 6, and specifically maybe even the White Rabbit, it seems like your real issue with the White Rabbit is just more so the execution of the plot. But when it comes to episode 6, or something that you mentioned about the whole show, is that you mentioned that it's being, too cinematic. And I think I kind of understand what you get, but the biggest example of me, or the biggest example of that, being too cinematic, but being a good thing, is definitely Chainsaw Man. I know you've probably seen this anime.
Oh, yeah, I know all about Chainsaw Man.
Yeah. I knew it'd get some kind of reaction. But definitely the anime took a bit more of the, more creative direction when it comes to cinematic versus the typical anime that we see, not on just animation, but the way how it looked too, with a more basic color palette and very toned down colors, and a lot of things that just come off as more cinematic. So I don't think too cinematic is a bad thing, definitely. And I think when episode 6 happens, and I get your issue that you wanted to like it but didn't. I think episode 6 is one of the rare few instances where I think that the DMC Netflix show really shines, is that it takes kind of that interpretation of what you may have of the characters, explains it in a way that feels just right. You know what I mean? They could just have them talk about their backstory and be blah, 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 I did this and that, and it would be so uninteresting. But to give it a whole episode for these two, not only to see their lives, but to see how they ended up in conflict and how that became of the White Rabbit and how that became of Lady, is I think one of the best elements of the show. And that's why I say episode 6 is easily the best, you know what I mean? So I'd like to hear a bit more about why you think episode 6 is bad in particular.
I'm not going to say it was my least favorite episode. I'd say I definitely liked, I think it was it episode 2 when Dante was fighting the mercenaries? I definitely enjoyed that one the most. But I will give, credit where it's due to episode 6. Throughout the whole entire show, that part kind of felt like a genuine attempt at the plot in conveying an interesting story. So I will definitely, praise it for that. But, I don't know, I just kind of didn't like how it was all packed into one episode, It's kind of just run with it. I would have really preferred if, maybe if we, in between the Dante fights and stuff, we got like little moments that would just build on these characters. Like, I mean, even though this is kind of like a standard formula that One Piece does, meet new character, get sad, Sabi backstory, yada, yada, yada. Like, even though it's like very formulaic, their execution just makes it hit so well that even though I'm expecting that backstory for this character, it still kind of sells me. And by the time episode 6 came around, rather than them kind of like selling me on the weight behind Lady and White Rabbit, it kind of just felt like, well, here are these little details you didn't know. And it felt like we were just walking away with that on the episode, rather than kind of giving me the relation and dissection of humans and demons and how their world is actively affected by it. Like, understandably so, the demons needed to leave the demon world and go into the human world, and society could lead into all these different aspects where the entire world of this Devil May Cry anime can change. And I would have liked to see a lot more of these philosophies and understandings come together, because at times it just felt like, well, demon lives matter, and then it'd be like, do it, Dante, do something. You don't care about demons, you're demon blood, but you're also half human. And he's like, well, but I'm also human, so I can't throw away human lives, so fuck it. And, when it came down to it, that kind of felt very half-assed to me, even though that idea, I think, was pretty much explored in episode 7, when they're like, well, what about the humans? And he's like, well, I'm going to just save the humans, and, nothing is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand it not being explored in Dante's character, so because otherwise there wouldn't be a plot. He's kind of like the bridge between, and he's just kind of like nonchalant with his characterization and everything that's going on. And maybe in the second season they kind of hopefully explore a lot more of this demon heritage. I'm pretty sure that they might just use Virgil to obviously be a lot more empathetic to the demon perspective. And, they're probably going to make a little bit of these perspectives flip-flop between Lady and Dante. But with episode 6 as a whole, though, I just kind of felt like maybe, I don't want to say it, it kind of felt like a little bit too little too late in a way. Like, the artistry behind it, I will definitely say is genius, but I just felt like I wish there was a little bit more going for these characters, because it kind of felt like, let's give them this backstory, because right now there's not much really going on with these characters, like, and it's just kind of thrown there. Like, I feel like if there were a lot more, like, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, well, this is what they should have done with the script, I just wish there was like a lot more relativity there. I couldn't really relate and get behind a lot that was happening, because it's like, yeah, I understand, his life was affected by the kids and stuff like that, but honestly, I really would have preferred if they took a whole episode and we got to see it happen, versus them kind of like glossing over it all in one episode. Like, I would have liked a whole episode dedicated to White Rabbit, and we get to actively see and understand his pain as a character and how he is affected, and it would have allowed me to come a lot more to terms with him becoming a villain. It would have made him a lot more human than what they're already actively trying to portray. And, looking at episode 6 is like, okay, bad things happen, he's the villain, and, they kind of expected me to just accept that, And I don't want to be too hard on the show because I do know like there is a very solid idea there, but it just really feels like when it comes to really bringing this character to life outside of him just being the crazy villain that he is, that was enjoyable on the screen when he was there, I just felt like there was a layer that was left unexplored that really made his potential lack. He was definitely one of the better, easily, like I said, objectively, he was definitely the best character because every time when he was on screen, the show was at its best. Like, I don't think anyone should try and take that from me. Kind of grow with that character a little bit more, because if I were to rewatch this Devil May Cry anime, it would have been like, you see him killing everybody in the beginning, because, when you first process it, you're like, well, evil guy doing evil things, being a demon, and it's like, oh, wow. So it makes him killing these humans hit a lot harder because he's killing his own kind.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of he's killing his own kind to protect the ones that kind of accepted him, which the show does give, it does give us that, but the thing is they only give us the idea of this. They don't really, I'm not gonna, it's kind of hard to say that they don't really, okay, they show us it, yes, they show us it. I was about to say they don't show us it, but they do show us his struggles, but the thing is, they didn't let us experience that journey with him. And that's where I feel like that's where it was really lacking, because it would have really gave him more of more leverage to lean on as a character if we could have experienced a day of what it was like for White Rabbit as a human, And
Mm-hmm.
it would have really made that transition to him becoming a demon, it would have had a lot more weight. And this is I try and refrain from talking about stuff like this, criticizing a show like this, because I don't want to just be like, well, this is what they could, this could be better if they did that, because, I try and give what they have its own merit if I can, because maybe that direction could have been executed in a way where maybe it doesn't need an episode where being with the White Rabbit isn't needed, And I feel like, honestly, the anime as a whole could have really benefited from a lot more episodes. But I guess people have short attention spans. Maybe they didn't have the budget, but a lot of anime fans really hate longer shows because I guess they don't really they don't have the dedication or the time of day, or maybe they have something else that they're thinking about at the time. But I really like seeing a show kind of explore the possibilities as much as it can and try and make me feel something. And that's my problem with episode 6. I will give it, you know what? It was sad. The music choice, I can see what they were going for, but it was just more or less hey, this is what happened, versus this is their pain and their struggle, and you felt that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of made that episode really not make the mark too much for me. And, a lot of people I asked when they watch the show, they're like, oh, I just skipped that episode. I'm like, damn, y'all didn't even give the time of day? That's pretty insane. But, yeah, I feel like that was just really missed potential. But I do think that it has really solid-ass ideas. That's one thing I'm definitely going to give it.
All right. So there's definitely a lot that you said there. So I guess I'll take it one little bit at a time. I definitely might agree on the episode of, the idea of the White Rabbit kind of getting his own episode to, flesh out the character. But I feel like, honestly, I don't feel like there's much of a need to go too in-depth with the White Rabbit, you know what I mean? Because I feel like we from that music video, we understand Lady and the White Rabbit pretty well for the most part. I know that there's like an element of where we always want depth, and sure, that can be for every story. You don't want a character to have less depth. You always want to add more, and I agree with that. Adding as much as possible. But I feel like they kind of did with one episode. Some people don't do with a whole show, which is kind of like give you just the right amount of information. With a it gives you just the right amount of information that you need from Lady and the White Rabbit to kind of run with them, and that's one of the reasons why I think episode 6 is really good. It's kind of a shame that you mentioned like some people skipped it. That's kind of a shame because I think it's definitely one of the better ones. And you also mentioned you didn't really experience the journey with him. So at that point, I just kind of say that there's always going to be that kind of disconnect. The fact is that the White Rabbit, while being the main villain, isn't the main character. And that's why, even though a lot of people joke and say it's Lady May Cry or whatever, we do experience a lot of the elements of the story through Dante. So having him, even for a whole episode, and the same thing is Lady, having them take up a whole episode where Dante's not even in it, is already a pretty big risk. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think what they did is that they knew that they had just amount of time to show his backstory, but couldn't go super far into it yet. But really, the White Rabbit is just supposed to be there as a human that got into the demon world, grew to love them, and then watched them all slaughter, became this kind of revenge-torn rabbit, and then that kind of opens the gateway for Season 2. Now, will we see some more stuff with Season 2 that maybe we'll get more episodes like this or more depth to the characters? I don't know. We'll just have to wait for Season 2 for that. Because I think that they can do a lot with Lady and Dante now that he's all locked up and stuff. So, we'll see that take place. But it ought to be interesting how they will take characters. But I definitely do agree that there's always more that can be added. And I think you were kind of right in saying that you wish that you had kind of the whole episode with him. I don't know why certain people are like, oh yeah, I want smaller seasons. Personally, for me, like the more you can show, the better. Because there's always like an important detail. But also, you need to remember this is a TV show, limited amount of budget. They can't just spend the whole amount of time running with it, So.
Yeah. See, that's exactly why I'm like. That's why I'm not like too upset about it. Because like I get it. Like maybe they. Because, maybe when people want to watch a Devil May Cry anime, they just want to see Dante killing stuff. Like, I definitely get it. And, like, you know what? I kind of would have liked a show that would have been a lot of what we were getting from episode 6, and then, Dante does his thing. Like, I mean, I guess you can compare it to... Can I really think of a comparison right now? Like, I guess I'll use the Spawn movie as an example, right? So they're really... taking it in a different direction. This movie hasn't really seen the light of day yet, but they're talking about like exploring the perspective and following the criminals, right? And then Spawn is going to be more or less the villain and kind of a serial killer, really showing the other perspective of what these guys are actively experiencing, which I think is awesome. Like I like that direction because I can just read the comics if I want Spawn, and then the movie is going to give me something that's going to like maybe put me onto it, and it gives me a different kind of change of pace towards what I'm used to. But then they're going to be, it's always that same thing where we jump back like, well, this isn't what I want to see Spawn. Like, this is Spawn movie, I want to see Spawn, or like, hey, this is a Devil May Cry anime, I want to see Dante. But, like, I definitely get it. Like, there are times where I was watching a Soul Eater anime, I'm like, I don't care about this shit, I just want to see Soul and Maka. But that was, like, me when I was younger, but, like, growing up, I'm like, I enjoy looking at all these characters on screen, And I feel like, see, that's one thing that also bothered me with the anime, like, I feel like we didn't get enough of, like, ladies' companions, how they just kind of just died so haphazardly. I really would have liked, I don't even think I can remember any of their names, and that's a shame. Like, that just irritates me, because, like, I'm willing to sit down and watch it, and the thing is, the show, I feel like, it caters to the people that aren't willing to sit down and watch it. It just feels like it's confident in some areas more than others. And that's where it really kind of it just disappoints me, because like it's confident that it can be that bombastic action oriented show. And I appreciate that. Like I'll sit down and watch it. I mean, sometimes when you try and put a person onto anime, like show me a fight scene, but like in Bleach, for example, like it's those moments in between the fights that make the fight that much more powerful. And I get it. A lot of people aren't really invested in the characters and stuff like that. They don't really care. They just want to see the action and go off with it. But it comes to a point where you look at so many action and play so many games. It's like, well, what's the backbone behind this fight? Because every single show is going to give me a cool fight scene. Like, I get it. Dude just got blown in half. Guy just got his arm cut off. Like, I can see that in anything. Like, everything can be violent. But it's like, but what can they do to show me what makes this violence stand out versus the other pieces of violence that I see?
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like a lot of that was missing. Like I can get it. Like, I understand the reasoning. Like, the anime is good. Like you said, like episode 6, it gives you that information, right? Like, and I'd say like viewers like us, we can actively like understand and come to terms with that information and accept it. But it's like, it comes to a point where I don't want to feel like things are just happening for the plot, just for it to be an excuse for Dante to shoot somebody in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like a specific direction. Like, this is the plot, so now Dante's just gonna have to shoot somebody in the head. Like, this is just what it is, and him killing a demon is the byproduct, rather than he kills demons, and yeah, now this is gonna be why he's gonna have to kill demons today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a very half-assed approach in certain areas. Like, I can understand, like, Adi seems like a guy who's like, he kind of seems like he leans into a very rock star personality in his shows. Like, I get it. Like, but I just feel like that execution and interpretation just feels very run-of-the-mill, And I just really wish that rather than focusing on that one thing of just Dante just having a fun, grand old time, like, just like with the games, like, I wish there was that fun, grand old time, and then, hey, there's this time where we gotta kill this demon, my family's, like, honor is at stake, it kind of feels like I get it, it's season 1, so I can kind of give it a little bit of excuse to an extent, but it kind of gets frustrating where it's like, okay, like, it becomes like a Mario, hey, your princess is in another castle kind of thing, where it's like, okay, the plot that you were looking for is probably going to be in season 2,
Mm-hmm.
And, that's a problem that I'm seeing in cinema now. Like, a lot of these movies are kind of like fundraisers. Like, hey, in this Godzilla movie, he only fought once or twice. We had to make the budget up. And now, in the second Godzilla movie, you might actually see him fight Mecha Godzilla this time. And that... I'm trying to be patient with it, but I just, like... I just wish, like, it would be something that I can go back to. Like, I understand, like, a lot of the times that's not always going to happen. And, sometimes, like, even with Resident Evil or even Devil May Cry, what makes Devil May Cry 1 stand out versus Devil May Cry 3, it gives me something that I'm not used to from Devil May Cry, Like, I can go and play a more horror-filled immersion direction of the game series versus the insane action and demonic atmosphere that you get out of 3,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that makes not only the games stand out, but it makes the franchise have a lot more legs to walk on.
Right. All right, I see what you mean. When you were talking about stuff about violence, I definitely understand that. You know, like, you're trying to make the violence purposeful. You know, like anybody, you're right, anybody can just show gore, but if it doesn't have a purpose or a reason or a proper execution, then violence is just violence, you know. And
right. But I will say this. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to have purpose, though. Like, sometimes, like, you know, I can appreciate brain dead action. Like, you know, Chainsaw Man does brain dead action, and, you know, it does it well. But even then, at times, it still gives you those moments where it's like, hey, this character's about to die. What is Denji going to do? You know? And even though he may be a dumbass, it still works in a way. And it doesn't go against his character. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But definitely, the part that I see a disconnect is definitely your take on saying that it's kind of what I gather from like a lot of what you said about episode 6. There's definitely a lot of talking about the run of the mill element of the episode, and I feel like that's just not the case in particular when it comes to episode 6. I mean, if it was run of the mill, they would make Lady the stereotypical boss girl that doesn't have any flaws, and that was just kind of super annoying for the sake of being super annoying. And then just have the villain just be evil villain for no good reasons. Like, to me, that's what run-of-the-mill means. Like, especially even in Western shows in general, they take that approach where they just make the female character the most badass character for no good reason and don't give any explanation for it. Versus in the show, there is a reason for it. Plus, she's based off Lady in DMC3, and DMC3 Lady could do a lot of badass stuff. And then when it comes to White Rabbit, in most Western shows, they'll just kind of throw him together and say, oh, he's the darkness or whatever. And they'll make him pure evil. He doesn't have any clear motivations. He might get one line or two, but he just kind of falls into generic slop. Versus in the show, they go out of their way to try and humanize the character a lot. So when you say run-of-the-mill, I see a disconnect, you know what I mean? Because I think episode 6 definitely, even with stuff with no dialogue, and yes, is it perfect? No. I wish there was more depth to it, of course. But I feel like there's, like, it could have been run-of-the-mill. It really could have. But I think the show definitely took a different direction with episode 6 and trying to build it more. I wish that the overall show had that kind of pacing and skill, but I think that episode 6 is really stand out because of that reason, you know?
Oh shit, my bad. I can't really remember what context I used run-of-the-mill in, but yeah, like, honestly, like, yeah, no, 1,000% agree. Like, I would have liked the whole show to have been like episode 6. I'm not even gonna hold you, because it would have like really just built upon a lot, you know. And I just feel like they weren't really confident in that storytelling. Like, and it's interesting because, you know, they're confident enough in the storytelling to give us an episode that has no dialogue, but it's like, what could they do with what they did with that, with the dialogue, plus adding maybe even moments without dialogue, you know? I feel like there was like an area of genius that was really unexplored there. And it makes me like really wondering like what the intentions are behind the entire development of the anime as a whole. You know, like, is it trying to tell a good story, or is it just kind of just being a good time? Like, and, you know, for the most part, like, I do feel like it's just a good time, but it's like, I feel like the show needs to be tell a story and then be a good time, because it feels like it's kind of like putting fun moments over top of the actual story. And, you know, and that's what makes it hard to keep someone who's like really trying to get immersed in the watching it. Like, it makes it hard to give my time of day, because it's like, okay, I have excuses to watch these action scenes, but like, what's the excuse for me watching the entire season outside of just looking at the fights? Because, you know, like, yeah, like I mentioned in my review, I was like, you know, if I really just wanted to, I'd just look up the fights, you know? I would have like really preferred like really solid narrative and just insane fights on top, because then it gives me a reason to watch the show. It makes me want to anticipate what's happening next, and it feels like that that kind of culture of actually giving a damn about the show rather than just liking it for branding and just crazy shit happening on my screen is kind of dispersing, which sucks because like in Dragon Ball, you know, there's a lot of people seem to think that that series is just brain dead fights, but you know, there's actually like a lot of substance going on, world building, genius ideas, and it just feels like they're kind of following more of a commercialized approach with how a lot of these shows are being made, and I'm just hoping that, you know, I mean, they even do it in gaming too, but man, it just really feels like there's just so much that is just missing on top of it all, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really find any reasons for wanting to watch the show outside of like it being Devil May Cry. And I don't want to feel like I'm watching a show because of the branding, because then again, like I'm just selling myself to a brand. Like, you know, the logo and what it is shouldn't really matter to me at the end of the day. You know, that's just the skin. Like, I want to know like what's going on with the bones underneath. Like, what's the meat and potatoes of this? And you know, it kind of feels a little bit shallow at times because like we get episode 6 that kind of gives us these meat and potatoes, but like, you know, like I mentioned before, like I would have kind of wanted to eat some of that food a little bit more. And you know, it's just kind of like they're showing us the plate, and like that's about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I feel like the show could have really benefited in really making a lot more people get invested in season 2 and what is there to come, because now it just comes to a point where it's like, well, what's going to happen in season 2? And I just don't want there to be a situation where it's like, you know, just more references. And I mean, hopefully, I'm really hoping he builds a lot more on Dante and Virgil, because, you know, I guess, you know, that is where they're at their strongest, where they can really kind of White Rabbit fighting for the demons, different from what Virgil is going from the reasons as to why Virgil is going to be fighting for the demons, you know? Because I mean, like, what kind of experiences are they going to sell us on with Virgil, you know? And I just kind of hope that they don't put all this as an afterthought just to give us a fun time again, because like, you know, like I said, like anyone can like find a fun time in anything. Like, you know, I could even play, like, I mean, I reviewed Mind's Eye recently. It was a bad game, but like, I mean, even some moments I could find some enjoyment out of that, and I don't want to like scrape the bottom of the barrel to be able to enjoy something. Like, I just feel like I'll take the meat and potatoes, and you know, maybe if there's like a slow episode or two, like I got to eat some vegetables to get to dessert, like I'm fine with that, you know. But I feel like most contemporary audiences, they just don't want that for some reason. And I if they're really like going a commercialized approach, it kind of sucks, because like I feel that with the funding of Netflix and everything, I feel like even with the backing and the power of the Devil May Cry brand, even if they would take these risks to go against the commercialism and just give us a more solid story, I feel like it's very possible, because I see like a lot of Netflix series that come out and they're kind of just like, they really do miss, like a show like Cannon Busters. That one just kind of like, there's a lot of like one-off shows that I feel are very experimental, because, you know, Netflix has shown us like a ton of times that they're not afraid to be experimental in their shows, like
BoJack
this one
Horseman
show that really stood out to me, not by Netflix.
Oh,
let me see. Have you ever seen Buddy Thunderstruck?
no.
It's kind of like this comedy show, and it doesn't really lean into, like, they don't curse in the show at all. It's just like some of the most lighthearted, charming comedy I've seen in a while, and it like sticks to its own specific style and leans into its own identity. But it, not a lot of people have seen it, but I do feel like this was a very solid opportunity to, like, not be afraid to tell a good story and lean into commercialism. Like, granted, you could argue if they don't lean into the commercialized aspects of the show, not a lot of eyes are going to watch it. But, the fact that it was Devil May Cry, which, like, I mentioned in the video earlier, I feel like with those eyes enough watching it, I feel like they should have just been confident enough in the Devil May Cry fan base and their storytelling, and I feel like they could have honestly made an anime that could have been talked about for, maybe even later decades. Because, we're still talking about the old Devil May Cry anime, and because, it kind of gave us the idea of what we wanted, and with this, I don't know, it just kind of sucks because outside of just being something new and trending, and something that, us Devil May Cry fans can, gravitate towards, it's like, what is really going to make this show stand out on its own, outside of just, like, maybe trying to make fans happy, and maybe giving me shit that I expect Dante to do out of it,
All right, definitely. Definitely a lot to take in there. I don't even know what to respond to because there's a lot that you said. But I do agree with most of it. You know what I mean? When it comes to trying to have the character of Dante and specifically the Netflix show trying to stick out is definitely hard to do. And I agree with that. It's definitely... And I'd say that's kind of the thing with most video game adaptations, is that it's kind of hinging on already having known the IP, you know what I mean? For you to enjoy the show. So, but yeah, I do agree with that. But I think maybe in this upcoming seasons, it'll either end up really good or really bad. I have a feeling that it might take it down to turn like Castlevania did at one point. But Castlevania, I don't think it had as much of a nosedive as it could have. But, still, similar issues could happen. Definitely. So, we've been talking for quite a while. So I'll wrap it up with this one question. You gotta let me know. Do you really hate Anders that much? Like the black guy that you call Black Beavis. Do you hate him that much?
Really good question. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I will be with... Yeah, I kind of do. Like, I don't know, because... I've been, like, I'm really deep into the anime space. Like, I follow a lot of artists. Man, I feel like we're gonna get into political territory with me bringing this kind of shit up. But
oh no!
I can name, like, a lot of projects that so there's like a very crazy artistic approach in pandering that is happening a lot. Like, you know what? I like diversity in my shows and stuff. Like, I mean, I'm black, even though a lot of people like to say I sound like a white guy, but whatever that fucking means, right?
Yeah, I get you.
It's like, you know how, like, Overwatch, they were kind of, like, being diverse and stuff, and everyone's like, oh, diverse characters, let's play the game and stuff like that, and, at times, I watch it, like, I see it a lot. Like, there's, like, it's really deep in this space. There's, like, independent anime and manga projects, like Black Sands or Apple Black, another one. And they just kind of, I hate it a lot because they just kind of, they try and cash in on diversity rather than just giving me, like, a cool, interesting character. And, they try and, like, act like they're doing groundbreaking things, like, this character is black and we're like making history by including characters based off of skin color or anything like that, or even if they want to just like tie in sexuality and all that, it's like I won't like the reasoning why I dislike Anders. Like, I mean, it's cool. I like the black character. It's tough. Like, I like seeing diversity. But like at some points, like I don't know. I didn't like how they kept trying to force feed us him in the plot because like I don't know. Nothing about him like really sold me. Like I get behind the idea of the family and stuff like that, but sometimes it's like they just try and include minorities just to include minorities, which isn't a problem at all. But it's like, well, let's throw in this character and make him a minority and make him a bigger deal in the plot than what he should be, And, like, I feel like Castlevania, how they gave us, what is his name? It was like the guy who was like he was getting, I think he was a slave.
Oh, yeah,
Isaac.
I know.
Yes, they gave us Isaac.
Yeah,
yes, like, that was like a really solid execution of a minor character being a minority, and, he actually had backbone, and it was believable, and, I was actually satisfied seeing him make his rounds in the plot. He was honestly probably one of the better characters in that Castlevania anime. And when with Anders, it's just like, I don't know, he just really feels there. And he's definitely going to, if he does not show up in season 2, I'm going to be really fucking surprised. But it just feels like there was just a lack of effort in what they were trying to do with him. Like, he was just kind of like, I'm going to do this with my family and this and that. I don't really know shit about his family. Like, I mean, if you take any soldier, I mean, you can take them and just put him in his shoes, regardless of what they're trying to do. And it would have just kind of been the same. But I will definitely say that I'm just hoping that they're not trying to like sell us on. I don't really feel like it was pandering this time around, but I don't know. It's really too early to say. But I'm just hoping that we're not just like being force-fed a character to relate to on skin color, because that just happens a lot in this art space, and you can tell when they're just trying to do it just to like force some kind of relation, and it just feels really shallow. Mm-hmm. And I hate that. Like, I don't want like that kind of excuse to be told in a story. Like, if you really give a damn about a minority or like any of these things going on, give it some substance and actually like make something that's just not gonna feel so bare and just in my face to be there. And a lot of these shows do that, and I'm glad Castlevania is like, it exists as an example for me to be able to bring up right now, because like I'm actually very proud of the writers of that show. They actually did do a damn good job with Isaac, because like in this space you just see like, oh, let's make this character a minority just to make them a minority, and it's like, yeah, well, that's kind of just there, cool. I mean, it doesn't make me feel more invested or better about myself. Like, I'm not going to sit here and praise something because it has that, but they expect people to just like jump and go crazy because a character is different, whether it be sexuality or skin color. Like, I'm just like, the fact that like I kind of feel like at times when they're making these shows, well, Devil May Cry is obviously not an example of this, but like it's like they throw it in your face like, yeah, we did that. Yeah, we care about you. We care about your sexuality. We care about your race. So now you're in the show. And, for me, it just kind of comes across disrespectful. But, I mean, luckily, Anders isn't like that. There's, like, just other series and things in the art space that do that. But my main issue with Anders is, I don't know, he's just kind of just there, you know? He's just kind of, he doesn't really stand out, and it kind of feels like they're really trying to force feed him into the bigger picture of things, where he actually got a lot of screen time. And it's like, why are we focusing a lot on him versus all of the characters that Lady had an attachment to and died? And you know, her gang of bounty hunters, they were pretty diverse in their designs. Granted, like, I mean, some of the designs looked a little basic there, but it's just like annoying because like I would have liked to see how, you know, the other black character in the series, like, well, he's always wearing a helmet. What does he look like underneath the helmet? We don't see that, or like we know nothing about them, but we're just getting Anders every second of the show because he's just being played for a fool by the White Rabbit, and I couldn't really come to grips with it because it's like, well, what about this family, you know? Like, what makes him being connected to the White Rabbit so damning that he has such a pivotal role in the plot? Because, like, you know, when he's sitting here betraying them, I, as a viewer, didn't feel shocked or backstabbed. I was like, well, I kind of expected that. Fucking up the plot under Dante's nose, and I don't even think he so much as talked to him. And it's just annoying because it's like, he's just there. And it's just very, very disappointing. I think that's where a lot of my frustration for Anders comes from. And then it's like, you know, he's like, a lot of people, like, I don't know if they, because people like to do this on Twitter a lot. Oh, this new character anime, he's black, he's amazing. I'm like, okay, his skin color, cool. What does he do? You know? And then I just don't want this character to be just pandering bait. Like, I don't want this character to be, oh, he's...
You know, it's actually interesting.
Well, my brother's in the room. I'll let him get a piece in if you want.
When you think about this entire...
I'm closer to Mike.
This entire Anders thing...
I'm closer.
This entire Anders thing is kind of comparable to the actual show. So, like, okay, you can reel me in with the fact that it's Devil May Cry. Okay, you can kind of reel me in that this guy is a black character and is diverse, but above those surface level, like, hooks that you try to give to the viewer, there's nothing else much going on there outside of, like, lazy, soulless writing that no one can really connect to. Like, this might be Devil May Cry, but outside of there being characters and references,
You want to connect to it beyond it.
you can't, as a Devil May Cry fan, there's nothing really there that makes you connect with it. Like, you know, where's the moment where Dante uses Stinger and you're like, oh my god, I hit that move in the game? Or where's the moment where, you know, like, get the nostalgia from the game? Like, genuine nostalgia, whether it be like, he said the line from the game. Like, I mean, I guess they did the jackpot thing, but there's nothing really there as a Devil May Cry fan that interests you outside of them just using characters and bosses and, yeah, just using the characters. And it's like the same with Anders. It's like, as a black guy, it's like, oh, he's black. But then it's like, okay, what makes, like, okay, he's black. Like, what makes him interesting as a character to allow me to connect with him?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to get your opinion on Anders because, like, you came across like you really hated that motherfucker. And I was like, did this dude kill his dog or something? I was like, what happened? I need to know. So I'm glad we figured it out.
No, honestly, a lot of it, like, I did see your video. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it is jokes. Like, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it is jokes. And, okay, it's actually a bit of both. Genuine frustration and jokes. And, you know, when I made this video, I wanted to do something different because, like, you know, that video was already pretty long. I would like to do, like, deep dives for the show like this, but, like, there was just so many, like my inner fucking Devil May Cry fan was just, like, tweaking, and I just, like, I had to let, again, I just see, like, no, I just saw nothing but praise, so I just had to let, like, other people know, like, there's a guy who did play the games who's upset about it, because, like, I watch other Devil May Cry reviews, they, you know, they pick it apart, they explain how it's not lore accurate and stuff. I mean, sometimes, I mean, it doesn't have to be lore accurate. I'm not going to be upset if a show isn't lore accurate,
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, what about like looking at the show for what it's like actually doing, And these are some aspects I did want to dig into, but like, I just like really leaned more into like a lot of the things that were rubbing me the wrong way as a guy who played the game. So that was mainly the direction I took. I did also try to bring in that genuine criticism and trying to look at things for what they are. But like, I don't know. For me, watching the show, there wasn't really too much that I really could come to dissect outside of its connection with the games. And that's where I think the problem, just like my brother said, really is like, outside of it being Devil May Cry, like, what makes it a good show? Like, the fact that, like, the only reason I watched this was because it was Devil May Cry. And it's like, now what if we take Adi and tell him, hey, make an actual fucking anime without digging into my childhood to make me watch your show?
Mm-hmm.
How would that be? It probably would not be a good show, honestly. But we'll see if he actually does that one day. Hopefully he does. I'd like to see him actually use his own ideas and characters, and maybe there might actually be something substantial there. It might just be a show where it's a really good ass time, and it might have a decent ass plot, but like, just with with all the attachments to what I'm already used to, it just, I don't know, it just was not really hitting the marks like I thought it. I never really thought it was going to hit the mark, but so I tried to like give the show leverage and not like critique it the way I am, like how you were able to like find the roots of the criticisms throughout our discussion. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'd say that's about it.
All right, very nice. Well, it has been over 2 hours, and I gotta go eat and stuff, and I got editing to do. I'm trying to work on my.
I do too.
Yeah, I'm trying to make my own combo mat again, so that'd be fun. And then I gotta edit this and then other videos, blah, blah, but you get it. But yeah, this was a really good talk, Rash. And if I do see a season 2 trailer and I see Anders, I'm gonna go, oh, poor Rash is probably having a heart attack right now. Poor Rash.
Yeah, Splinter, before you go, I have a question.
I'm gonna plug my headphones right quick. So
Okay, I think it's good.
okay.
Did you hear it?
I think you said before you got cut off, why didn't Zero want to talk to us? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So, here's the thing about Zero. He recently came into my server, and Zero, I don't want to be mean. He's a good guy. He makes a lot of slop, but I think Zero sometimes is a bit of a pushover sometimes. When it comes to like certain things, I guarantee you, if Zero actually talked to you, he would probably backtrack a lot of what he said, because like even his most recent video on DMC, he had one where he's answering his email, and then he like changed the title like 5 times because people kept criticizing him for his titles and stuff. Zero's a nice guy. He's a really good, genuine person. That's one of the reasons why he didn't shout out your name in the video, versus I like doing that because I like to have the watcher either go watch the original version or they know the context of it or know who I'm talking about, because I think that's important. But Zero, he's a good guy. Zero's a good guy. He's just he sometimes gets controlled by the slop. The slop consumes him, and he's a good guy though. I'll say that much. He's a good guy. So
Yeah. Like, I'm glad like you're able to reach out and we're able to have this conversation, because I don't want him thinking like I took anything of what he said personal. It's just like, a lot of people were not watching my video, and then they were just kind of just like, the whole Agni and Rudra thing, they were just running with it, and I was just like, well, I gotta let these people know, like, I'm not, a guy who didn't play the games and stuff, like, because I don't want people like watching my reviews and being like, oh, this guy he just talked out of his ass to follow what's trending right now.
Right.
I won't follow a trend if I have to. I mean, that just comes with doing YouTube, but I'm going to at least, it's going to be something I'm passionate about, you know? Like, if it just happened, if what I'm passionate about happens to be trending, or I'll probably check out something trending and I'll just give a genuine idea on it. And yeah, that's basically like the approach I try and use the reviews, and I wanted people to like kind of get that transparency. I'm just hoping he didn't take like what I said in the video like personal or anything, because I honestly have no bad blood towards the guy. I think it's cool how we're all able to connect off of Devil May Cry, and I think you're pretty legit yourself. Like, I definitely appreciate you for like coming in and understanding everything I was saying, because, you know, most people don't do that. They just want to raise their pitchforks and not try and understand, because like I've been being in the anime community, you know, some of them, they're like, well, this guy is more in depth into anime than me and knows more than what he's talking about, and they start like getting active frustrations out at me and stuff, and it just creates a very annoying echo chamber. And a lot of the times they just like debating and stuff, and it's just like, okay, at the end of the day, you're just going to view this way, I'm going to view this way. Like, there's no point in trying to sit here and prove each other wrong for hours, because like I went to one of these conversations before and they were just trying to debate and make me look stupid, and they ended up twisting my words and I didn't catch on to it. And I was just like, oh, wow.
Don't yeah, too much, bro.
My bad. Yeah, I know you gotta eat. My bad, bro.
I would like to say that I would be down to have a mature conversation. So, like, there's no bad blood.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'd like to see him do Dante Must Die. I would like to see that.
Well, we'll see if we can eventually get him to do that. I don't know. He's already playing V for a charity stream, and I don't know how much that will take out of him. I bet that will drain him of all his resources. So maybe I'll talk him into it. Maybe. Let's see. Well, I'll make that happen. All right. I'll try my best. I'll push for it. Okay.
Yes, that would be really cool to see him do that.
But anyway, thank you guys. I really did enjoy this conversation. It was really good. Like I said, I'm not here to like look for ohms or clips or stuff like that. I'm just here, you know, genuine conversation. We might disagree on stuff. I think that's cool either way. You know, we both share something that we like. And the fact that even, you know, one person saw my channel or reacted to it or had a response, I think that's cool. So anyway, I'll see you guys around. Thank you guys again for having this conversation. It was great. So.
Of course, man. Like, the conversation was so long because it was just that damn good.
It was. It was sweet. It was stylish. All right. So.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys around. Yep. See ya. Well, that was fun. I don't know if I should say something afterward, because I know I gotta record an outro, but I don't know what to say. I'll do it later. Blah, blah, blah. That was fun. That was good.